Here are top 3 reasons to have your employment contract reviewed by an attorney before you sign it. The first reason is simple and obvious, and that's to address your questions and concerns about the contract after you read it, so that you understand it better and you're more comfortable signing it. The second reason is to make sure that the most important terms in your employment agreement are not ambiguous and they're clear, especially when it comes to your compensation, your bonus, and your stock options. Way too many agreements out there are quite vague and ambiguous when it comes to bonus and stock options, sometimes intentionally and sometimes unintentionally. And the typical questions are, is the bonus mandatory or is it discretionary? If it's discretionary, what does it depend on? And is there an actual formula for calculating the amount of bonus? What if you don't finish working for a quarter or a year? Will you still receive a pro rata bonus or will you receive nothing? The same applies to stock options. When do they vest and how? What happens if you don't finish working for the vesting period? Will you receive some of the stock or will you receive nothing? These are just some of the questions that need to be clarified in the employment agreement so that later there is no dispute between you and the employer and there is no disappointment on your part because you expected one thing but you ended up getting something different. Clarifying an agreement before you sign it should really help making sure that you and the employer are on the same page when it comes to important terms, compensation being one of them, of course. And the last important reason to have your employment contract reviewed by an attorney is to make sure that you negotiate those terms that seem to be a bit harsh. And one example is repayment of relocation packages. Let's say your employment agreement says that the employer is going to give you $50,000 for relocation expenses. But if you stop working for them for any reason during the 2 years of your employment with them, you have to repay the entire amount. $50,000 sounds generous, but the repayment provision sounds a little bit too draconian. What if you worked for that employer for 22 months or 23 months? Shouldn't they give you a break and shouldn't they expect you to repay them less? This is something that's always worth negotiating. Even though the employers rarely chase employees after repayment of relocation packages, it would be nice not to have such a harsh provision in an employment agreement. And this is just one of the many examples of provisions that are often grossly unfair and they can and should be negotiated. So, make sure you have your employment contract reviewed by an attorney before you sign it, especially if you're taking a higher position in the corporate world. It's not going to cost you very much, but it will help you avoid a lot of trouble in the future, a lot of misunderstanding, and a lot of disappointment. Thank you.